Ever stood in a supermarket aisle, overwhelmed by the sheer number of options? Imagine standing in front of an entire wall of cereal boxes, each promising a unique blend of taste, health benefits, and value for money. Or consider the world of online shopping, where a simple search for a white shirt results in thousands of results. Welcome to the paradox of choice. In theory, more options should mean more freedom, more satisfaction. But in reality, our brains aren't always equipped to handle an overabundance of choices. This is what psychologists refer to as choice overload. The more options we have, the harder it becomes to make a decision. And even when we do make a choice, we're often left feeling dissatisfied, questioning whether we made the right decision. This isn't just speculation. Multiple studies have shown that when people are given too many options, they're likely to feel overwhelmed, leading to decision paralysis. That's right. Too many choices can actually stop us in our tracks, making it impossible to choose at all. But let's say you overcome decision paralysis. You pick a cereal or click on a shirt, you've made a choice. But now, you're left with a lingering sense of doubt. With so many alternatives, how can you be sure you made the best choice? This is another side effect of choice overload: regret. And this regret can make us less satisfied with our decisions even if we've made a good one. So what's the solution? Well, it's not as simple as just limiting our options. After all, choice is an important part of freedom and autonomy. But being aware of choice overload can help us manage it. It's about understanding that while variety can be good, too much of it can be paralyzing. It's about knowing when to limit our own choices, to avoid feeling overwhelmed and dissatisfied. So the next time you're overwhelmed by choices, remember, more isn't always better. Ever wondered why the first number you hear influences how you perceive subsequent numbers? This is a fascinating concept in psychology known as the anchoring effect. It's a cognitive bias that describes our tendency to rely too heavily, or anchor, on the first piece of information we receive when making decisions. Let's consider a scenario where you're negotiating the price of a used car. The seller quotes a price, say $10,000. Regardless of whether that price is reasonable or not, your brain latches onto this initial number. This $10,000 becomes the anchor, the reference point from which you negotiate. Even if you manage to haggle the price down to $8,000, you may feel like you've scored a great deal. Why? Because you've anchored your perception around that initial $10,000. In another instance, imagine you're at a yard sale. You spot an interesting sculpture. The price tag reads $50. You think it's a bit pricey for a yard sale item. But then, you see a smaller tag that says, originally priced at $100. Suddenly the $50 doesn't seem that high anymore. Again, your mind has been anchored to the initial higher price. This anchoring effect isn't just limited to financial decisions, it permeates our daily life. It could be the initial number on the weighing scale influencing your perception of your fitness journey, or the first grade you receive in a class setting your expectations for the rest of the semester. Understanding the anchoring effect can help us navigate our decision-making process more efficiently. It reminds us that our initial perceptions can be misleading, and that we should take a moment to consider other factors. So, when you're presented with an initial number, remember to take a step back and consider other factors, because in the grand scheme of things, that first number is just that, a number. It doesn't define the value of the object, the outcome of the negotiation, or the trajectory of your decision. It's merely an anchor, and you have the power to sail beyond it. Why do we think plane crashes are more common than they actually are? This question leads us straight into the heart of the availability heuristic, a fascinating concept in the realm of decision-making psychology. The availability heuristic is a mental shortcut that relies on immediate examples that come to mind. When making decisions or assessing situations, we tend to consider information that's readily available to us, rather than examining all the relevant data. This means that our perception of reality can often be skewed by how easily we can recall related instances. Take for instance the fear of flying. It's a common phobia, and yet, statistically speaking, air travel is significantly safer than driving. So why do so many of us dread the thought of soaring through the skies? The answer lies in the availability heuristic. When a plane crash occurs, it's a tragic event that garners extensive media coverage, creating vivid emotional images that stick in our minds. These incidents, though rare, are more memorable than the countless safe flights that happen every day. As a result, when asked about the risks of flying, we're likely to overestimate them because the catastrophes are more available to our memory. In contrast, car accidents happen daily and in vast numbers, but they rarely make international news. These incidents, despite their frequency, don't leave as strong an imprint on our collective consciousness. Therefore, even though driving is statistically more dangerous, we perceive it as safer because instances of car accidents are less available to our memory. This isn't to say that the availability heuristic is all bad. It's a cognitive tool that allows us to make quick decisions without needing to process heaps of information. However, it's important to be aware of its influence and the potential for bias it introduces. The availability heuristic teaches us a valuable lesson about decision-making. It highlights the importance of stepping back and questioning whether our perceptions truly reflect reality, or if they're shaped by what's simply more accessible in our minds. So, next time you make a decision, remember to look beyond what's immediately available. Ever made a decision in the heat of the moment that you later regretted? It's a common experience, isn't it? We've all been there. Emotions are powerful forces in our lives, often guiding our actions and decisions. They're the color that paints our world, the music that sets our rhythm. But like a powerful torrent, they can sometimes sweep us away, leading us to make decisions we might not otherwise make. Think back to that time you made an impulse purchase. You were at the store and there it was, that shiny gadget you didn't really need. But the excitement, the anticipation, the sheer joy of the moment clouded your judgment. And before you knew it, you were at the checkout line, credit card in hand. That, my friends, is an emotion-driven decision. Or consider a time when you made a decision out of anger. Maybe it was a heated argument with a friend or a loved one. In the heat of the moment, you said something you didn't mean. That, too, is a decision fueled by emotion. Fear, too, can guide our decisions. It can lead us to avoid risks, to play it safe, to stick to the familiar. But it can also prevent us from seizing opportunities, from reaching for our dreams, from living our best lives. But here's the thing, emotions are transient. They come and go like waves on a beach. But the decisions we make, the actions we take, they can have long-lasting consequences. That impulse purchase might lead to financial stress down the line. That angry word might damage a relationship that's important to us. That opportunity we passed up out of fear might never come again. So what can we do? Well, understanding the influence of emotions on our decision-making is a good start. Awareness is the first step towards change. And remember, it's not about suppressing or ignoring our emotions. It's about understanding them, navigating them, making space for them. It's about making decisions that align with our values, our goals, our true selves. Remember, emotions are transient, but the consequences of our decisions can be long-lasting. So how can we make better decisions? A question we've all asked ourselves at some point. As we've explored, our decision-making isn't as straightforward as we might like to think. Cognitive biases, heuristics, and emotions all play a part. But by understanding these elements, we can start to make better choices. One practical strategy is to take a step back before making a decision. This pause allows us to evaluate the situation from a distance, rather than being swept up in the immediacy of the moment. It provides us a chance to reflect, to consider the broader context, and to ensure we're not being unduly influenced by our biases or our emotions. Next, it's essential to consider all the available information. In our fast-paced world, we're often tempted to make snap decisions based on limited data. But by taking the time to gather and analyze all the relevant facts, we can make more informed choices. This doesn't mean we need to know everything before deciding. It's about striking a balance between being informed and being paralyzed by information overload. Another essential strategy is to not let our emotions cloud our judgment. This is easier said than done, of course. Emotions are a fundamental part of who we are, and they can provide valuable insights. But they can also lead us astray. When we're feeling particularly emotional, it's often a good idea to delay our decision until we're in a more balanced state of mind. Lastly, it's crucial to understand that making better decisions is a process. It's not something we can perfect overnight. We're all susceptible to cognitive biases and emotional influences. But by being mindful of these factors, and by actively using strategies like taking a step back, considering all the information and managing our emotions, we can improve our decision-making over time. Remember, the key to making better decisions is to understand how our minds work, and to be mindful of the traps we can fall into. It's about learning, growing, and becoming more adept at navigating the complex landscape of our minds, and the more we practice, the better we'll become.